Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scuzz. Juggling has no positive effect on us as human beings. Scousebo.
Oh, buddy. I guess there is a little time for story time at the end of the show. As we recap
that's a Sun Bowl callback for all you listening.
Yes, the wonders and glory of the 2005 Sun Bowl.
I'm not gonna wait, Sammy. For those who weren't there, the UCLA marching band was led preposterously by a smug ass juggler, who that's all he did was wander around juggling stuff, and I guess he was decent at juggling stuff, but just get out. No, thank you. Those of us who were there and were quite angry as that game proceeded found the juggler to be quite distasteful and smarmy even in the way he performed.
Although, Eric, earlier in that game, before the juggler really started to take a turn, I believe you turned to me and said, "This is the greatest day of my life."
I said, "This is the happiest I've ever been." When we were up 22-0, and I regret that statement to this day. And y'all have never let me live it down.
Several onside kicks later, you felt differently.
So yeah, we're talking about UCLA. This is a team that is, undergoing some transformations here. Obviously, Chip Kelly out, Deshaun Foster in. We don't really know what to make of that, but UCLA defense last year wasn't terrible.
They were awesome. But with that said, massive caveat. So they were very, very good. But as we are going to be saying with all of these Pac-12 teams, we're kind of trying to look backwards because we're not carrying the wealth of experience we have with all the other Big Ten teams that we've built up year to year into these Pac-12 pods. So looking back over the past 10 years of UCLA defense, I can look at that. I can see what happened last year. And look, I'm not saying that they are about to fall off a cliff defensively. I'm saying that they just shotgunned a case of old style and they're dancing on the edge of the cliff. No one is going to be surprised if they fall off that cliff. So I very much doubt that the vast majority of you...
John, if a tree falls off a cliff in Brentwood and nobody notices, does it make a noise?
I don't know. There's some sort of California, how many people are hugging the tree when it goes over thing here, Scuzz. But
fair point.
But regardless, here in the Midwest, I very much doubt that most of you are well-versed in the defensive history of the UCLA Bruins, but just FYI, it ain't good. So in the 9 years prior to last year, UCLA finished with a better scoring defense than 7th in the conference once. And that was in 2015 when they were 5th. So 5th is as good as they got over the past decade in that conference. And during that stretch, they were 11th or worse 3 times. So we're not talking about defensive tradition here. And this is where I remind you that Chip Kelly, who oversaw the majority of that stretch, cares so little about defense that during his tenure with the 49ers, he grabbed Jim O'Neill as his DC for literally zero other reason than he wanted a 3-4 DC and Jim O'Neill was available. Chip does not have a reputation for caring about defense. And yet, in his last year on the job at UCLA, he somehow crushed his hire at the defensive coordinator position. D'Anton Lynn was a position coach with the Ravens, and he arrived in UCLA and basically transformed the defense completely in 1 year. Last year, UCLA jumped from being the 7th best defense in the conference to being arguably the best defense in the conference. His defensive coaching basically dragged UCLA to 6 to 8 wins last year. And it provides a lot of context for Chip Kelly leaving. Because understand, this defense would not have had this defense not just been bizarrely successful last year. UCLA would have for sure been a bad football team. And no one was expecting it to be nearly as good as it was last year. But D'Anton Lynn is apparently an awesome defensive football coach, which is why USC dumped that fat pile of cash in front of him and stole him across town. And Chip Kelly's gone now too. And his replacement, Deshaun Foster, who Scuzz is going to talk about a bunch, is an offensive-minded guy. And here is where I also let you know that UCLA just lost Leitu Latu, Darius Musau, and twins Gabriel and Grayson Murphy to the NFL on the D-line and in the linebacker core, or also known as all of UCLA's best defensive players. That is 30 sacks from a team that had no other player with more than 2. That is a stupid 57 tackles for loss from a team that had no other player with more than 7. Are you getting the message here? This is not going to be the same defense. It might not even be a good defense. And frankly, I'm pretty bummed that UCLA is one of the new arrivals that we missed this year, because I kind of want a piece of this team, and it kind of feels like Chip Kelly saw the writing on the wall with what this defense was last year and what it's probably going to be going forward. And hopefully, I think now you get the picture too.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients, no fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group, compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation, and go Cats. So Scuzz, offensively, you've got, like we say, Deshaun Foster coming in here, and, Deshaun Foster goes out and says, Eric Bieniemy, what are you doing here?
Well, he took the highways in LA to follow up on that joke. But John, you mentioned Chip Kelly, seeing the tea leaves on the defensive side. Well, he had to drink the tea leaves on the offensive side after Dorian Thompson-Robinson left for the NFL, and to see just the absolute bottom fall out of his offense last season. And it is interesting that he nailed the defensive hire in a year which he otherwise kind of seemed to be phoning it in, or at least just unhappy and unsettled. And
yeah, that's the thing, because I look back and I'm like, there's no way anyone could have expected the D was going to be this good.
Yeah, it's crazy. I guess, and interestingly, it didn't maybe had USC already hired him away before Chip Kelly went on his kind of hey, can I be somebody's offensive coordinator?
I think so. I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe so.
So that's a real writing on the wall moment. But yeah, I mean, offense, which has been his hallmark for his entire career, they fell off a cliff last year. They had their lowest scoring output since 2018. That was, primarily a factor of just a dramatic reduction in passing efficiency. The QB play was split between true freshman Dante Moore and Washington transfer Ethan Garbers. Moore struggled with accuracy, with interceptions. He got sacked a ton. Midway through the year, they switched to Garbers, who was much better. He, completed 70% of his passes, was much better on TD to pick ratio, etc. But he got hurt and didn't play out the string, if you will. He struggled a little bit on the road at Arizona and USC, but overall, he was a very poised and competent QB, if not a flashy one. And this is important because Dante Moore transferred away from UCLA. He's at Oregon now. And Garbers is coming back, which they were not expecting. It's kind of a bit of a boon for them, actually. It gives the new staff and Eric Bieniemy a smart, solid quarterback to build from. He mentioned Deshaun Foster. He's planning to run a pro-style West Coast offense, which should sound really familiar because that's what Bill Walsh did, and that's what Mike Holmgren learned from Bill Walsh, and that's what Andy Reid learned from Mike Holmgren, and that's what Eric Bieniemy learned from Andy Reid. And based on the track record that we've seen in those West Coast offenses, and even his 1 year at the Washington Commanders after leaving Kansas City, Eric Bieniemy knows what to do in a West Coast offense. Last year, he increased a lot of the passing stats, with the Commanders kind of right out of the gate, even with a rookie QB, et cetera. So, we know that he's going to be able to make an effect in that vein. Having that returning, we'll say, solid quarterback in Garbers, I think gives this offense a chance. Last year, sacks were a huge problem for them. The offensive line is a big concern as a result. But if you're going to, instead of having, a deer in the headlights, true freshman QB back there, now you've got a West Coast style, get the ball out quick type of passing offense with a more veteran guy. It should help a lot with the sack rate. They bring back most of the depth chart on the offensive line. The talent's not overwhelming, but we think it seems very plausible that this is going to be a competent offense. We also know that Bieniemy typically deprioritizes the running game in his offenses. The Commanders saw a 33% decrease in rushing attempts last year.
Which is weird because Bieniemy was a running back.
Yeah, I mean, how times change, right? This does not look like a strength on paper for UCLA anyway. So it's probably kind of a good fit, if you will. But it'll be really interesting if and when they're trying to close out games with a not especially offensive O-line and a scheme that deprioritizes the run. So that's something to keep our eyes out for. They've got some real talent in the pass catching core. Their top 3 guys returned from last year. They get a transfer from Notre Dame. They've got a really nice tight end named Moliki Matavao, who could become a focal point under Bieniemy. But importantly, there's a handful of guys. They're going to be able to put 4 or 5 receiving options on the field. Those guys are going to all go in totally different directions, and they're going to have timing plays in the West Coast system to move the ball. Depth is probably their biggest concern, though. The backup quarterback is a runner, not a passer. The skill guys, I mean, like I said, there's enough to get 4 or 5 of them on the field, but there's not much depth behind them. They're not stacked in the wide receiver or running back room. I don't see this offense being a lot of waves, but it's interesting. Whereas John, you painted much more of a negative picture on the defense. I think, the way Foster is talking about the focus of the program, preparing guys for the NFL, using pro terminology, bringing in this West Coast scheme, bringing in Bieniemy, feels like at least offensively, this program could be moving in a nice direction as they enter the Big Ten. I think there's just a huge question on if Bieniemy will stay and for how long.
Have you ever thought about building a Westlaw Pirates-like community for your business? If so, we've got your solution. Teamworks Media, a brand marketing and content company, is here to help you tell your brand story better. Better yet, you can work directly with the founder, Jay Sharman, known on this podcast as Like the Posts. The same expertise he's brought to brands like ESPN, the Big Ten Conference, and Northwestern University are now available to you in an affordable way, directly with this Wildcat superfan. Contact Jay directly at 312-446-9435 or jay@teamworksmedia.com to learn how to elevate your brand story.
In nature of a pivot, helping none of this is this friggin' schedule, which sucks.
Yeah, so let's get into that. You talk about the whole
welcome to the Big
Pac-12,
Ten,
right? The whole Pac-12, knock against it. Oh, you're going to be traveling so much. They're going to be traveling so much. Good God, every member of the UCLA Bruins is going to be like diamond platinum after this season is over, just based on the amount of traveling they have to do.
Interestingly, though, just like USC, really no late cold winter spots.
With one exception, though.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that. But real quick, they open up the season at Hawaii. They've got a bye week right after that. Indiana at home.
Congratulations! I hope you enjoyed those 2 games.
They're at LSU. They're home for Oregon. Then they travel to Penn State.
Holy crap.
All the way back across country, at home against Minnesota, all the way back to New Jersey the week after to play Rutgers.
That's
then
just
they got
brutal.
another bye week. They got another bye week before then flying to Lincoln to take on Nebraska. They're home against Iowa. They go up to Washington. Then they're home for USC and Fresno State to wrap up the season.
This schedule sucks so hard.
Whose schedule is worse? Theirs?
Holy crap.
Theirs or Florida's? I mean, Florida's got a terrible.
But I mean, I'm just like, wholly separate from the travel, Rutgers and Nebraska, those are two teams that might play UCLA even, and UCLA has to cross the country for both of those games and play at least one in what could be miserable cold weather. They're not rolling into this schedule with a particularly good football team. And it's a team with new coaches. Everything's new. Their bread's for sure buttered on the offensive side of the ball. I totally get that. But, I mean, Lord have mercy. I'll give you Minnesota. After that, I mean, I'm licking my lips if I'm Fresno State and I'm getting a piece of whatever the Bruins have left on November 30th. If you ask me what the floor is, 3. Can they win more than that? Sure, absolutely. But if we're talking like mid-grade Big Ten teams, this is not the year to be catching Rutgers and Nebraska back-to-back weeks on the road. Like
there's a bye in there, but
there's a bye, but I mean, like they're getting no help talent-wise from like they could have drawn Michigan State. They didn't draw Michigan State. You know, it's like they get Minnesota at home, which helps out a lot. But man, this is a rough schedule. Welcome to the Big Ten.
I'm surprised nothing was done to try to moderate this travel in some way, shape, or form. And we saw this with USC too, right? Like no back-to-back home games. UCLA at least has them at the end of the season there, but man, just bouncing back and forth. Oregon, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, like home against Minnesota, and then back out to Rutgers. That is crazy.
So it's L.A. to Louisiana, back to L.A. to Pennsylvania, back to L.A. to New Jersey, back to L.A. to Lincoln, back to L.A. to Seattle.
Jesus. I mean, it really
and that's not even counting the to and from Hawaii.
Sam, you made mention of Florida a second ago. Florida travels to Texas and they travel to Mississippi State, and that's it. They have away games like in Jacksonville and Tallahassee, and Tennessee. I guess
I mean, in every way, it feels like UCLA of the 4 teams drew the short straw. And I think if we're talking in terms of like football power and the football pecking order in which these 4 teams are coming in, this is the team you would expect to be drawing the short straw, and it really feels like they are. But I mean, I fully expect them to be 2-3 when they host Minnesota. If they lose that Minnesota game, this season's going to get away from them really quickly. Because if they lose to Minnesota, I very much expect them to lose to Rutgers and Nebraska. So again, I don't know that this is a winning football team, but man, talking myself into more than 6 wins on this schedule is really hard for me to do.
Yeah, John, I'm counting. I mean, 6 feels like a real stretch too.
Yeah, and I'm just they're 2 different stretches. Like, this is unreal, and I get that in the new world that we live in this conference, teams are going to have runs like this. But when you add their this is a team that plays LSU, Oregon, and Penn State in 3 straight games, and then in another 3 straight games plays Iowa, Washington, and USC. That's horrific. That's horrific for if Alabama was playing that schedule, we'd be like, damn, I wouldn't be setting myself up for the playoff that way. But this is UCLA.
The farthest they traveled last year was probably Corvallis.
Yeah.
That's unreal. There, yeah. Again, in every way, their fans, if your team sucks this year, you need to just take a mulligan, because this feels like your team is the sacrificial lamb for conference expansion.
Yeah, I mean, the farthest they traveled the year before was Boulder.
That's at least a time zone.
Yeah,
they didn't. I don't think they let. I mean, I guess does Arizona in what November is Arizona on the same time zone as California? I think they are. I don't know that they left the West Coast time zone last year.
It's just unbelievable too that like, and on top, like the Hawaii game is on the road also. Like Honolulu, just throw that on the pot. Why not? Like, man,
yeah, this team is going to be so gassed by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, again,
but, I mean, presumably they will have flown out to Hawaii a few days earlier, adjusted, and then they have the bye week coming back. So it's not like they're coming right back to play the next week.
But it does. I mean, again, like this is where the ridiculousness of it starts to sink in, because like bye week or not, this is a team that's flying from LA to New Jersey, coming back, and then their next trip is LA to Lincoln in November. I mean, it ain't gonna be easy. It is what it is. Money, money, money.
Anything else to mention about the Bruins before we go?
Any more juggling?
I was gonna say, I feel like I should make a pithy comment about the juggler, but I'm not sure what to say.
I mean, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit involving the schedule and juggling the travel, but I would never.
Oh wow!
I would never.
Bravo, sir!
I would never stoop to such levels.
I mean, I guess like if UCLA fans can take stock in the basketball situation is probably going to be a little bit more in their favor. Maybe this is like, them getting kicked in the teeth in this sport, and that one will be, fine because it's the one they all care about.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at westlawpirates, and you can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics. Look for us in the West Lot of Ryan Field flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scousbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.